Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my mid-month wrap-up for March. It is officially the 15th. I think it's the 16th today, actually. So it has been halfway through the month, and it has been a good reading month so far. I've surprisingly had like really good reads the past week that I've been obsessed with. The month overall has been so-so, but I did do a Mafia Romance reading vlog. So a lot of these are Mafia romances, and I'm just really excited to talk about these books. So I don't know if I said, I read 15 books in the first half of March. I am currently reading The War of Two Queens by Jennifer Armentrout, so that's gonna take me a while, and I'm in the middle of two historical romances, so I'm like at a point where I have a bunch that I'm almost done with, but that'll be on my next wrap up, so I'll go ahead and get to the 15 books that I've read so far in March. The first one I've already mentioned in a couple videos, and that is Thin Ice by Cassie Mint. This book is so good. This one is a novella, but I gave it 5 stars like immediately. There were 2 novellas I read this month that were instant 5-star reads, and I normally don't give novellas 5 stars, but there's so much in here that I loved. It is a sports romance, coach-athlete romance, and he is Scottish, he is brooding, and she is really into him, but she is trying to like make it work with her partner. They have a long history, they're really close friends, and she really likes her coach, and our coach really likes her, and so there's lots of dynamics like at practice when they're talking and coaching, and so I'm pretty sure most of it took place like at the rink, and it was just so good. I loved how protective of her he was and how jealous he would get, and it was just perfect. It was perfect. I loved it. 5 stars. Highly recommend this book. Then I finally read When You Wish Upon a Duke by Charis Michaels. This is book 2 in her series. I love Charis Michaels. The cover's gorgeous. The cover for book 3 is gorgeous. These are all Disney retellings in historical setting, and so I really enjoyed the first book. I gave it 4 stars. This one, unfortunately, I gave 3 stars. It had so much potential, but the story itself was so slow. Our heroine works for like a traveling company. She grew up with a mother who was a mistress, and I think her mother was an actress, and so they got to travel the world and have a lot more freedom than not the normal upbringing of a historical romance, so I thought that was amazing. Our hero, his cousin, someone he knows, was kidnapped and taken to Iceland. Our heroine has been to Iceland, knows how to get there. It's really hard for them to travel there. She knows how to get there. She knows all the secrets and like the lay of the land, but she has a really traumatic past that has to do with Iceland. She was betrayed and things did not go well. And so she's like, I'm never setting foot there. But our hero is like, I desperately need your help. Like, I need to get my cousin. And he like lied to her about why he had to go. And so they end up going together. Such a good plot, right? And it just fell so flat. Like, part of it was really good, but this book is 400 pages. Like, that does not need to be 400 pages, and I feel like there was a good like 150 pages. I was listening to the audiobook where I was like, nothing's happening. I do not care about this plot. But the setup was so good. A lot of it was so good, but the execution was just boring. Even talking about it, I'm like, this sounds like a 5-star read, and it had potential, and I liked their romance, and I liked the whole traveling aspect. I loved her background, but it just fell really flat when it was an actual story, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, sadly. But I'm excited for the next book. I'm still gonna read it. The cover's really pretty. She's got a nice pink dress on, and I have high hopes for what Charis Michaels can do next. Another disappointment is I'm So Not Over You. I always mess up that title, by Kosoko Jackson. This one's MM. It's second chance. It's fake dating, and it sounded amazing. They had to go to a wedding together, and so our heroes broke up. And I listened to this on audio, and I believe they said they were dating for 1.5 years. I would never have believed these two dated. Their connection felt so new, and the one hero is from a very wealthy family and the other one's not, and they had dated for a long time, and then they broke up. First off, we never learn why they broke up. We just know they broke up, and the one that's not wealthy was devastated. So I'm assuming, I don't remember who broke it off. I'm assuming the other guy did, but he is very aware of their money difference and will not stop talking about it for the entirety of the book. And I'm like, if you were dating each other for like 1.5 years, you'd think you'd get used to that. It wouldn't be as much of a shock to you now, but he is still obsessively discussing how wealthy the other guy is, and that's a huge point of contention in their relationship, and I wanted him to like move away from that, come to terms with that, something, but instead it just continued to be an obsession for him throughout the entire book, and we have them fake dating. So the one hero calls up the other and says, hey, I have to have dinner with my family. They love you. Can you please come come to dinner. And he's like shocked. He's like, what? And his friends are all like, no, you're heartbroken. Don't go through that. But he does. And then they end up being invited to this wedding and having to go together. And so I feel like not a lot in the plot happened either. I really didn't like our main hero. We're only in one of their heads. And so I would have liked to understand the other hero a lot more if we had his point of view. There was just a lot missing in here. And I'm pretty sure I was watching Robin from Paperbacks and Planners talk about this, and she pointed out everything I didn't like about it either and said it really needed a lot more editing because it was just missing so much and just did not have anything that really drew you into the romance, especially considering the fact that we don't even delve into why they broke up in the first place. Like, as a second chance romance, you need that history, you need to understand that. We're never even told why they broke up. So how can we believe that they would get back together again? And we just know that one of them is heartbroken, but we never get the point of view of the other one. So I give this 3 stars. There was just a lot missing for me. It had so much potential. Again, it just lacked in execution. Then I read a doozy. So I read Ice and Rapture by Connie Mason, and I feel like I don't know how to rate this because it was absolutely entertaining. I could not put this book down. I mean, I read it in a day because I had to, because I read it the day our live show was for Historical Hellions, but I was just drawn into this story. Our heroine's a reporter. She wants to report on the gold rush, so she's going to Alaska. She needs to find her way there. She meets our hero when he's running from the police and like jumps into her bed and hides behind her. And he's immediately like super into her, and she's like, you're a pig, I don't want anything to do with you. But then they end up having a physical relationship. They end up going to Alaska together. So it's a traveling this has like every romance trope ever. It's a traveling romance, hate to love, and it has amnesia, it has accidental pregnancy. Like, there is every single trope in this book, but the number one thing in it is lack of communication. Like, that is what drives the plot, the fact that the hero and the heroine will not communicate. Though what was refreshing was the fact that the hero was the one who was infuriating. Typically with these old like historical romances, I don't know if I'd consider this a bodice ripper because the only non-consent in here was kind of the first intimate scene, but even then, like, she was consenting, and so it's not really a bodice ripper. But in these, I'm just reminded of like Shanna by Kathleen Woodiwiss. The heroine is usually insufferable and makes the most annoying, unintelligent decisions, and you're just like, why are you doing this to yourself in this relationship? That's the hero in this book. He is infuriating. He will not communicate with her. He jumps to conclusions and runs away, but this was so entertaining. So I gave it 3 stars because like the amount of miscommunication, if he just sat and heard her out, we wouldn't have half of this book. But it was so entertaining. And then we had amnesia thrown in at the end, and we had a love triangle on her part and his part. It was just very entertaining, okay? But would I recommend it? I don't know. If you want just like a bonkers plot of a historical romance written in the 90s, is this the 90s or the 80s? Like, nobody writes romances like these anymore. Like, I'm excited to read more from this time. Oh, it was 93, the year I was born. I love reading these bonkers plots because they're just entertaining. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend them, but the reading experience was definitely something, and I'm happy I read it. Like, I'm excited to continue on in the books we're reading for this book club because they are so entertaining. You guys, then I started my Mafia Romance reading vlog, and I read Cardinal Urges. It is going to be one of my top favorites of the year. This book is amazing. It is a Mafia romance. I've already ordered my paperback from the author. She has special editions of the first book that she had on her website, and shipping was expensive, so I added another book and the shipping stayed the same, and I felt like that like offset the shipping a little bit. So it's coming. It's going to be signed. This one, our heroine's kidnapped by the rival mafia because she started a mafia war without even realizing it, and Sloane was her name? I'm pretty sure her name was Sloane. Her attitude is hilarious in this book. Like, she's not scared. She's not a damsel in distress. She's like, you're gonna kidnap me? Okay. What are you gonna do about it? And she is so refreshing as a heroine. And what I loved is that people just like can't help but love her. And so these big bad mafia guys love her. Like, not in love with her, but like love her as a person and immediately feel loyal to her, which is hilarious. The guy who kidnaps her slowly falls for her, and he's mad that he's falling for her because he doesn't know what he wants to do with her because he is now I believe he's the new leader of his mafia, and he kidnapped her, and he goes through some dilemmas of his own about whether he wants to keep her, get rid of her, and there are some dark moments in here. It's Mafia Romance. Like, there's some bloody stuff, but oh my goodness, was this amazing. Like, all I will say, there's a bazooka scene which stole my heart. I was just like, yes, I am obsessed with this romance, and I could not recommend it enough. So if you want a really good Mafia romance, you have to read this. I really enjoyed book 1, but this was like out of the ballpark. Such a good historical romance. Then I read Mafia Mistress by Mila Finelli. The author actually reached out and sent me paperbacks. They're behind me though. I'm not gonna grab them. But this one I read on KU. I gave it 4.5 stars. Our heroine is pretty much kidnapped. I mean, like, it's a thing in Mafia romances. It's why I love them so much. And she was actually, like, not sold off, but, like, sent off by her father. They reached an arrangement with an Italian family that's a mafia family, pretty much like a mafia king is what he's called. It is our hero, and he is taking her to Italy to marry his son. His son is 18, she is 18, they're gonna be married. He is immediately attracted to her. So I got to chapter 2, and it is the dad's point of view. So this is a betrothed's father romance, and I ate that up. I loved their dynamics. She obviously felt attracted to him, but she does not want to marry someone in the mafia. She knows her mother hated life in the mafia. Her mother passed away, and she's like, I want my daughters to go be successful and out of the mafia life. And so she wanted to go to college. She didn't want to get married, but she's being married off, and she is devastated, and she has her sisters at home that she's trying to protect, and she's always been a bit rebellious anyways. Like, she had a boyfriend and she wasn't untouched, I guess you could say, which is like, you know, big no-no in the mafia world. And so she's pretty much held captive in Italy. She's supposed to marry the son. They become friends, and then she becomes his dad's mistress. Mistress in the sense that she is his lover, I guess. Like, he is not married, his wife died, and so he's single, but she is there for him physically, and it was so good. There's a cliffhanger. I can't wait to pick up book 2. My only thing is that once they like got together, it was like straight up like steamy times for a good like 30%, and I was like, can we like pick the plot back up a little bit? So I feel like there was a little bit of a stagnant part of the plot, so that's why I gave it 4.5 stars, but I love this book. Definitely recommend. Then I read The Brit, so I got this on audio. It's been on my wish list for a while because I saw it somewhere, but the paperback is $20, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll like it. I haven't really read Jodi Ellen Malpass before, but this was so good. I gave it 5 stars as an audio. It's a very dark romance. So it is a mafia romance. Our heroine and hero both have very tragic pasts, and they bond over the need for revenge. And so they've seen bad things, and they aren't fazed by it. So our hero, as a young boy, he had a very abusive stepfather, and he gets bullied by kids at school to the point where they like cut his face open. And so he is approached by this mafia guy from the US, and the mafia guy like, here kid, like here's some money, and then ends up taking him in. And so he's raised by a mafia boss and moves to the US. And then she gets in with the mafia, not willingly at all, gets pregnant, and is blackmailed. So that's all I want to say about her character, but she is blackmailed into getting close and becoming the mistress of politicians to get secrets out of them to give to the mafia. Well, our hero sees her, what she's doing, and kidnaps her. And so she is kidnapped by him, and she is then blackmailed to get close to him. And he is very intrigued by her, and his friend is like, don't let a woman bring your guard down. And of course he's all like, don't talk about her like that. And it's their romance, and the ending was crazy. There's a lot of mafia in here. I really enjoyed it. I loved the depth of the characters and how they understood each other and their pain. There's a lot. It's really dark though. Like, there's self-harm in here on our heroine's part, so know that going in. Like, they are two very damaged people, and they have different ways of dealing with that, but I just love this book so much. Highly recommend it. I know Tori and Sam both read it and really enjoyed it as well, and I got the paperback of book 2, so I can't wait to read more from this author. The other novella that I read that I gave 5 stars is Stuck With You by Ali Hazelwood. This novella just super surprised me. So the first one in this series was just okay. She's coming out with 3 novellas on audio, and then they're gonna come out in ebook soon. First one was fine. It was Enemies to Lovers, and then this one is Second Chance. There was miscommunication, but that's fine, and Hate to Love. So they met and immediately hit it off, and they actually work for like rival like engineering companies or something. I don't remember what they do, but they went on a date, had a one-night stand, but they didn't mean for it to be a one-night stand. They were like, this like connection is like nothing we felt before. I'm obsessed with you, and I want to spend more time with you. They bond over really fun things. They're both huge soccer fans. I'm a huge women's soccer fan, and so they talked about women's soccer and like women's soccer players, and I totally followed their conversations. So it was really fun to read, and they have a lot in common, and so it was fun watching them talk and really click. And this is told in flashbacks, so in the present day they get stuck in an elevator together, and they have not talked to each other since their one-night stand because she has cut him off. She's ghosted him, and she's furious with him. And so we figure out like how they fell for each other, and then they have to confront why she's angry. And it was so good. Like, so much was in here for a novella. I feel like there was so much to their romance, and I was hooked the entire time. It was miscommunication because they didn't just talk about what was making her mad. She refused to speak to him. But you understood on both of their parts why they thought what they did about the other person. So I just really love this. It was so good. 5 stars. Then I was so sad. So I read Savage Lover by Sophie Lark, and I gave it 2.5 stars. I know this is people's least favorite, though. People did not like one of my favorites, and I'm a little upset about it, but it's okay. This one is Nero and Camille's story. This is Nero and Camille's story, and Camille's working at the garage that her dad owns, and her dad is getting sick, and she's making sure her brother graduates and goes to a good college. Her brother's getting into some bad stuff, ropes her into it, and she's trying to protect him. And Nero is a mafia son. This one had like 0 mafia content, which made me very annoyed, and all they did was go to parties and hang out with people from high school, and had mean girls from high school and popular people from high school, and it felt like it was still in high school. I don't care about high school romances. I'm also kind of out of new adult too at this point, so the vibes of this just were not for me, and they did not match any of the other books in the series so far. I've read the 4 now. I'm going to talk about book 4, and I feel like there's no mafia. We barely saw his family whatsoever, and so I didn't get that like familial connection we get in all the other books. There was nothing to do with like the politics of the mafia, their families, what happened in book 2, nothing. It was just 2 people. He was robbing a bank for some reason, because he just felt like it and wanted money, and she was having to deal with a cop that was trying to use her, and going to parties and trying to get drugs or like crack down on drug dealers. I did not care. I did not care about this book. I felt like the romance was very underdeveloped as well, and it was just boring. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. I am shocked I gave this 2.5 stars because I absolutely love Sophie Lark. I read her serial killer duet. Loved those, except for the second book. I mean, the second book was a little disappointing, but the entirety of this series that I've read so far, I've read the first 2, gave those both 5 stars, I believe, and the Air, I gave that 5 stars. Loved it. This just wasn't for me, and Tori told me she skipped it because she heard it wasn't good, and I was like, I should have skipped it, but I don't want to skip a book in a series, so disappointing. But it's okay because book 4 redeemed it, but I'm going to get to that in a sec. Another disappointing read was A Daring Arrangement by Joanna Shupe. This one I wanted to love and I didn't. So our heroine is actually from London, and she is coming to America because her father wants her to marry someone. She's in love with an artist back home, and so she decides to find the most scandalous person to be betrothed to, so that her father forces her to call it off and she's free to marry who she wants. So she finds her hero and decides to ask him, can you please be engaged to me so that this can happen? It's coming back to me now. I completely forgot part of the plot, but now I remember. His father killed himself, and his family has been like ruined ever since, and so they're self-made, and people don't accept them, especially because his father like left all their money. He was swindled by investors, and so he's trying to track down the investors who ruined his father's life. And so like there's a mystery in there, and I didn't care. And the romance was just very boring. Not a lot happened in here. I mean the romance was fine, but like the plot was boring. I wasn't super connected to the characters, and she was in love with someone the entire time. And so she's falling for the hero, and she is in love with the artist, and I did not like how that plot line played out whatsoever. So I gave this 3 stars. I wanted to love it more, but I know like Notorious Vow, I have them here. I'm interviewing her on Friday, and I have heard these 2 like aren't as great. It wasn't. It was 3. This one I gave 4 stars. I was pleasantly surprised by this one. It's A Friends to Lovers, He's Deaf, A Notorious Vow, but like I wasn't into this. I'll probably put this off until I feel like reading it because I haven't heard the best of things either. Her other series though, absolutely amazing. The Uptown Girl series, absolutely amazing. Like I love Joanna Shupe. This one was just a miss for me. Then I did a reading vlog where I read the best-selling romance in the Kindle store. So Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl and I did a collab where we both read it and did a reading vlog, and it was Taste by Melanie Harlow. I was excited because I read Ignite and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and this one was set up in the previous book where it was her best friend and she was having a romance with the guy she hates who got a job as a chef where she works at this inn place, and she's super into wine, and she's in charge of their wine business. So I gave this one 3 stars. I was so disappointed in it because it says in the blurb, which I was not aware of because I think I skimmed the blurb and like read the beginning, and it's forced proximity, enemies to lovers, cool. It's a surprise pregnancy book. And it says this in the blurb, so it is not a spoiler. But the surprise pregnancy happens like 60% of the book. So like this synopsis gives away the entire plot of the book. So the synopsis itself is a spoiler, but I'll just tell you, like, I hate surprise pregnancy books, and this one had everything I hate about them in it. So they get snowed in together and they have a one-night stand and start kind of opening up to each other about why they hate each other and their banter, and she starts to trust him, and then she gets pregnant. And every insecurity that the surprise pregnancy trope has, it was in here. And she was making decisions for him, would not talk to him, and not give him a choice. And I was like, you're annoying, and you need to talk to him, talk about your feelings and what both of you want, because she automatically assumed he'd want nothing to do with her, he wouldn't want children. He has wanderlust, so he is never content to stay in one place. He's just moving constantly, and he talked to her about that. He's like, I get bored easily, and life is just meant to be lived to the fullest, and like, he loves doing that. And so she's like, well, obviously you don't want to settle down, and obviously you don't love me, and obviously you don't want children. And I'm like, is it obvious? Because you haven't talked to him about it. And so she was so annoying. I didn't hate it, but like, I loved the first half. It was such good enemies to lovers, snowed in, things get a little heated. It was so good. And then the ending was so annoying. So I gave it 3 because I did enjoy the beginning, but I didn't like the end. Then I have the next 3 or 5-star reads. So I read the Lady Temps Air. This one is so good. Our heroine's a widow, and she has a bit of a past with Max. Max is the brother of the 2 women in the first 2 books, and the last book ended up with her running away with the hero, and so she's friends with Helena in here, and Helena and Max end up running after her together, and nothing happens, but like, they're really intrigued by each other. And so her family wants her to remarry. She thought she was fine. She thought she'd have the freedom to do what she wants. She's super passionate about this orphanage that she has and taking care of women who are single mothers and like pretty much like shut out by society. She wants to help them, and so she needs to be taken seriously, and nobody wants to support her cause if she's a single woman. So she decides to ask Max to fake court her so that she can get the support. And he also needs support for something. I'm blanking on what his dad. His dad is threatening to cut him off if he doesn't marry. His dad has some health scares, and so he's like, son, you need to get married now and settle down. And he's like, excuse me. So it's perfect. They're gonna fake court, fake be engaged, but they're falling for each other in the process. And this does have to do with infertility, which becomes a huge part of the plot, because in this time, it was a woman's job to have children. Carry on the family name, have a family. She knows she's infertile. She tried to have babies with her previous husband, and it really put a strain on their relationship before he died. And so she's super nervous about how Max would feel about that, especially because she knows Max has to get married to carry on the family because his dad's pressuring him to do that. So that's a lot in here, but I loved how it was handled. I loved just how they liked each other, and Max was so into her, and it was just so good. I gave this 5 stars. Such a good book. Book 2 was so good as well. Like, book 1 is good, but like books 2 and 3, amazing. Love this, 5 stars. Definitely recommend reading it. Then I read an arc of Falls Boys by Penelope Douglas. This book, 5 stars. Like, this book was so good. Definitely read the author's note at the end. Penelope Douglas explains their own background and how that kind of connected to the heroine of the book. So Arrow has a really hard life. She bounces from home to home. She's trying to make sure that her brother and sister are supported. So she drops out of high school and gets involved in some bad things. There are feuding towns, and she ends up going to the other town to get a debt. She's like a debt collector for some bad people. And she is like, she can hold her own. I will say that. She is scary. She gets the job done, and she knows how to protect herself. There's like lots of fights in here. So she goes to the other town to collect a debt, and it's someone close to Hawk. Hawk is our hero. He sees her. They get entangled and spend some time together, and Hawk immediately is intrigued by her and wants to help her, but they really butt heads and don't get along, and it's just so interesting. This gave me so much nostalgia to the Fall Away series because it's all their children. It's a spinoff, and also it kind of gave me like Corrupt vibes because they have this like night where things kind of get a little creepy and people like break the rules, and it also kind of reminded reminded me of Punk 57 with how they are like mean to each other but they can't stay away from each other. It just had all the vibes of Penelope Douglas's books put into one, and I just really, really loved it. I loved their romance. I loved then how like all-consuming it became in such a short amount of time, but I really believe their connection. This book doesn't span that much time, but it was so good and I really loved it, and I gave it 5 stars, and I can't wait for more people to read it and see what they think because I loved it. Okay, the next 5-star read I read was Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark. So I was disappointed in the 3rd book. Immediate 5 stars for this one. I love an angsty romance. This is a second chance romance, which I love as well. Dante and Simone meet when they're young. Simone's 18, Dante's 21. He accidentally kidnaps her when he hijacks a car, and they're instantly captivated by each other. Like, she was kidnapped by him, but she's like, ooh, I like this guy. And so they end up falling head over heels for each other. They are like all-consuming obsessive romance. Something happens and they are driven apart, and they don't see each other for 9 years. Simone is now a model, and Dante now owns a security company, and they're thrown back into each other's lives. And it was everything. I love an angsty romance. I loved everything about this book, and it has a trope that I'm not the biggest fan of that I absolutely loved in here, and there's like really crazy like assassin plot at the end. I loved it. Give me all the mafia action. He kills someone in the first chapter he's introduced, and I'm like, give me the mafia action. I love this. I love the fact that someone was trying to kill them and they were trying to get them before they got other people, and it was just so good, and I love the romance. I'm obsessed. Like, this one of my new favorites of the series. Dante is everything. I loved his character so much. I just loved the all-consuming obsessive romance, and then they're pulled apart because of circumstances, and now they're thrown back to each other, but they're like, ooh, can I trust you? I don't know. Oh, it's so good. 5 stars. You should definitely read this one. And the last book I read was A Walk in the Park by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This is an Audible original. It is short. It was like a 3-hour audiobook, and so it's a novella. Our hero and heroine meet because they go to adopt the same dog. There was a glitch. Someone had all these people accepted for all these same dogs, and so they were both supposed to adopt Zeus, and they were both like dead set on adopting this dog. So they were like, okay, like we can't decide, let's co-parent the dog. Now, like, realistically, I'm like, I would never adopt a dog with a stranger and agree to co-parent, like, absolutely not, but they did. And it was cute how they bonded over the dog, and they kind of started falling for each other, and it was just a really sweet, adorable romance. And he is actually someone who's pretty famous. They both have like pasts that they're still trying to overcome romantically, so I enjoyed watching that play out. I gave it 4 stars. It was just a very short, sweet romance. Nothing too special, but nothing bad, so it was a fun way to pass the time. I love all the puppy stuff in it too, so I would check it out if you're interested, but it was just a fun, sweet romance to listen to for a little chunk of time. And those are the romances that I've read so far in March. Let me know what you've read, and if you've read any of these, I would love to hear. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.